Hello, everybody. Happy long weekend. We are August the 4th, 2025. I am your host, Hung Lu. I'm with Cash Property Inc. And even though it's a holiday, I am here because you know what? Every day, regardless of it being a holiday, it is worth spending a little bit of time moving or increasing your financial literacy. And that's what we're going to do today because I am in Toronto and I am excited to share with you an idea that in in a downturn, you can still get full asking price for your condo, townhouse, or property that you're selling. And whether you're in Toronto or Vancouver, where the prices are softening a little bit, these type of ideas go so much further in helping you because you'll be able to figure out with the buyer a way to strategize and get the full asking price that you want on your property. Okay, so stay tuned. Okay, so let me just make sure that everything is up and running. And then we are going to jump right in to the calculation on this. Okay, so, and then I'm also going to share with you an actual property that I know of because I grew up in Toronto, an actual property that is for sale on the market right now. And it was one of those properties where, as I was growing up, I was always like, wow, that's an amazing property. And, it's on the market right now. And so we're going to run through that calculation together to see whether or not it actually makes sense to buy it. Okay. So before we do that, let me bring up the Excel sheet. And the idea here is during a downturn, okay, it is hard to get the full asking price for a property that you want to sell. So this is assuming that you are the seller, okay, not the buyer. So now, depending on the hat you're wearing, yes, if you know this idea, then you can work with the seller to do the strategy and then ensure that you actually close on this deal. Okay. Because a lot of times people walk away from a deal because they don't have enough money to close or they don't have enough financing for the mortgage. So, this idea, which is called a vendor take back or VTB or seller financing, it doesn't matter what the name is that you give it as long as you can explain it to the other party. Okay. So, let's do this. So, I'm going to go into this tab here. Let me make it a little bit bigger. Okay, so I've got some notes from another conversation that I was having, but the idea here is that I'm going to be the seller, okay, and I'm going to offer a vendor take back, a seller financing on my property because the market is soft. I can't sell it at the price that I want. Okay, so let's just say that the price that I want is $710,000. Okay, a random number out there. So 710,000. I get an offer from a buyer for 620. Okay, that's how you know the market is soft. Okay, like it's like a 90K difference here. Okay, but in a soft market, people will lowball the offering. Okay, it doesn't matter what the appraisal comes in at, it doesn't matter what the assessment is at, they will lowball because it's a soft market. Rightfully so, right? So, if I was in their position, I would lowball the offering too as much as I can. Okay. Now, if they really want the property, okay, now I'm going to always assume that it's an investment property. Like I know down here, I've put down a condo here. Condos are not my strategies. It's not one that I support as an investor. Okay. So I'm going to just assume that this is a multifamily, potentially a duplex, triplex. Okay, fine. But it's got to be more than one unit and definitely not one that has maintenance fees. Okay. So the reasoning behind not doing maintenance fees, there's a completely different, it's a different mindset, different strategy on that, completely different episode. Okay, so today we're just going to focus on how you can get full asking price for a property that you want to sell. Okay, if you want to sell. On a side note, okay, I'm not a believer in selling properties. Okay, there's always another strategy that could be used to keep that property in your portfolio and still grow your portfolio. Completely different conversation again. So we're gonna not talk about that and we're gonna move back to this one on the VTB. Okay, so let's just say that I'm selling the property 710 and I have a buyer who's offered me 620. Okay, so now coming from the side of an abundance mindset, hey, great, I've got a buyer. Okay, but of course, it's not at the price tag that I want. So, what can I do as a buyer, as a seller? Okay, so as the seller, I would offer them a $90,000 VTB. Okay, so what that means to make this work is we would write up the offering, the purchase, the APS, okay, the agreement of purchase and sale for 710,000. Okay. I would offer them a vendor take back, let's just say at 10%. So all the green is negotiable. Okay. So I would offer them a 10% interest rate. Okay. And for those of you who are not in investing, 10% sounds great, which is fantastic. For those of us who are in investing, making 10% is just acceptable. Okay. So I'm putting a 10% return on that 90,000 vendor take back. Okay, so keep that in mind. It's on the 90,000, not on the 710, because the buyer is going to put down their down payment and then they're going to go and get the mortgage for up to the 620. Okay, so in this calculation, we're not focusing on what the buyer has to do in terms of their mortgage. That's their issue. Okay, what we want to make sure as the person selling is that we're going to get the full price that we want, which is the 710 in this case. Okay. So the buyer is going to offer us 620. So the difference of that is 90,000. Okay. And that's simple math. Just take 710 minus 620. That gives us 90,000. Okay. And then we're going to say to the seller, hey, seller, I'm going to give you the property at the price that you want at the 620, but I want to be able to sell it to you at 710 and I will bridge that gap for you by giving you a second mortgage or some loan of the difference and you'll pay me interest on that. So you as the seller, you have to be able to sell that to your agent or sell that to the buyer. Okay. So this is what the math works out to be. Okay, so it's going to be usually it's interest only just because it makes it a lot easier to manage. Okay, so to figure out what the interest only payments are, you just take your 90,000 times your 10%. So that is $9,000 for the year. So you could say, okay, Mr. Buyer, you can pay this to me every single month, or we could just defer it for the year and you just pay me at the end of the year. Okay. There's so many different ways to strategize on that. So $9,000 for the year that you're going to get. Let's just say it's at the end of the year. And let's just say you offer a 5-year term on this vendor take back. So the buyer's going to buy it for they're going to buy it for 710, but get the mortgage and their down payment's going to be equivalent up to 620. And then they're going to take 5 years to pay off this 90,000, but they're not really going to pay it off. Okay. At the end of the 5 years, what they would have only paid you is the $9,000 per year. And then they refinance that property. They pull out the equity for 90,000 and they pay you back. So they don't physically have to pay you 90,000 every single, like spreading it over the 5 years. They're going to pay down their mortgage. The property is going to increase in value, maybe get some cash flow if there's tenants. And then at the end of the 5 years, have the 90,000 to pay you back. So that's how the exit works. Okay, so that is, of course, assuming that the property value is going to increase and there's going to be a correction in the market. And as we all know, okay, the general trend is that at some point the trend does go up. Okay, so as long as you're following the market and as long as you're not eager to sell, the trend will be upwards. Okay, so after 5 years, you will get your 90,000 and you would have gotten the 9,000 a year. 9,000 a year for 5 years. Okay. So what does that actually mean for you? Okay. So look at this. The total additional profits to you is $45,000. That's $9,000 times 5. Okay. That's 9,000 times 5 is 45,000. So really what you're getting at the end of the 5 years is you're actually getting your 710,000 plus the 45,000. Okay. So now in 5 years, you would have made 710,000 plus the 45. So you would have actually gotten more money than what you originally sold it for during a downturn. Okay. If you're not throwing your hands up and the light bulb going off and doing like the hell yeah sign, okay, then you need to sit down and watch this video again. Okay. So, okay, so I love this strategy because here's the thing. You can work, if you're the buyer, work with the seller. And if you're the seller, work with the buyer. Okay. You can adjust these percentages. Okay. So let's just say you go in there, you're saying, okay, I'm going to do a 5% interest only rate. Okay. Look at that. You're still ahead. Okay. By $22,000. Okay. You still get the asking price that you want of 710. You're just not getting it today. Okay. So you'll get your 620 and then you just carry the 90,000. You're the bank for somebody for 5 years. Okay. Okay, so I love this idea. Okay, so now let's just go up a couple of numbers here, and then I also want to make sure that we run that property in Toronto. Okay, so let's just say you are the seller. We're selling a multifamily, and the multifamily is, in this case, I know it's 3 million, so we're going to put 3 million in here. 1, 2, 3. Okay. And the buyer is going to offer you, let's just say 2.5. Okay. So there's a vendor take back of 500,000. Okay. That's a lot of money. Okay. Now let's just say the interest rate is 5%. We're going to do interest only payments. Okay, and we're going to defer it or do it monthly. It doesn't really matter. Okay. At the end of the year, I'm going to have $25,000 extra. Okay. So we're going to do a 5-year term. Especially in multifamilies, you want to take advantage of 5 years because as the seller of a multifamily, I can defer my capital gains on the property I'm selling for 5 years. Okay. So the 5 years is the max that you can do it. And then you just switch it over to a loan and it's still a great option afterwards. Okay. But the VTB is only up to 5 years. Okay, so now look at this. This is an extra profit to me as the seller for selling a property at $3 million where the buyer can really only do 2.5. And I'm going to hold the mortgage, a second position mortgage at 500,000. I've made 125,000 extra dollars. Okay, so at the end, I've actually sold the property for 3.125. Okay. Like this is a win-win for both parties. Okay. Because now the buyer can buy a multifamily and get in the market, do what they need to do. And I, as the seller, have offloaded a property that I no longer want for whatever reason. Okay. This is a win-win for everybody. Like this vendor take back idea, if you understand it, it will help you work on your next deal and close it and get the cash that you want for your property now or get into the market because you don't have enough cash or can't qualify with the lenders. Okay, so now I'm going to bring up the opportunity that I want to share with you guys, and we're going to walk through the calculation because it just occurred to me, hey, you know what, Hong? Let's run through this opportunity together. Okay, so this is in Toronto, 72 Sororan Avenue. Okay, so as a kid, a teenager, a young adult, I used to walk by this property a gazillion times because I grew up in this area, like Ronces, Hyde Park, Parkdale area. Okay, so I could literally like, yeah. Okay, so anyway, so I know this property so well. Okay, and it is a gem. Okay, so I I am not affiliated with this property or the agent, so I make no cutback from this. So if you check this property out, please send me, a token of a bottle of red wine or something if you end up buying this property. And if you're the agent, please reach out to me and send me a bottle of wine or some chocolate or something. Okay, because I make nothing from promoting this property. But I love this property. Okay, so they're asking 3 million. Okay, so 3 million, it's an eightplex. It's a corner lot. Okay, corner. Okay, it is 50 by 113 corner lot. Okay, great. Okay, 5%. Let me see here. Cap rate, 5%. Okay, that is good in Toronto. Okay, I'm not exactly sure what the cap rate is in Toronto. I'm not actively like buying anything in Toronto. Okay, but I would say that that is a good cap rate. Okay, because the cap rate that I would expect for Toronto would be like 3.54. Okay, 5% is like almost like on the borderline of like say Calgary. Okay, so if you can get a property in Toronto for 5-6% cap rate, you're doing really good. Okay, so now let's see. Do they give us any information on rents? Okay, so partial vacancy possible, so you can set your own rent in this highly sought after neighborhood. Okay, that's fine. The thing is, rent markets are softening in Toronto, unfortunately. Okay, so as a side note, if you are looking for a one-bedroom apartment, I have a beautiful one-bedroom apartment for rent in Toronto. Okay, so 8 units, 3 parking spots. So that's part of the property, but there's tons of street parking. So, so it's not an issue. And this property is close to transit and close to the bike shares. So you don't need to worry about, oh my God, we don't have parking for every single tenant. Okay, now I don't know about the laundry situation here. I'm assuming there's laundry. Okay, so each one has their own electric heater. Tenants pay their own hydro, so that's fine. C4 plan and financials. Oh, they have financials. Oh, I am not seeing financials. I must be missing something. Okay, so I don't have financials unless they've attached it on the photos here. Nope, nothing. Okay, so, okay, no financials here. That's fine. We're just going to do a quick and dirty calculation on this. Okay, so we know it's 8 plex, we know the price point, and we know, yeah, it's an older building, but it's a beautiful building. Okay, so let's go here. Okay, so let me switch over to the Excel sheet and we will calculate this out with a VTB. Okay, so let's go into, do we need to do it? Okay, so you know what? I'm just going to leave it on this tab here. Okay, so the price point is 3. I'm going to assume that I can only, get a down payment and get the mortgage, all that stuff based on 2.5. Okay, so now we're going to calculate out the stuff here. Okay, so my down payment, let's just say my down payment is 25%. Okay, because it's a multifamily. So 3 3 3 million. Okay, times 25%. Okay, so I need $750,000. Okay, to be able to do this. Okay, so I'm gonna offer them 250. So the vendor take back is going to be the difference here. So I'm just gonna update this formula here. 3 million minus my offering. Okay, and then minus, oh, hold on. Okay, let me see here. So I'm offering 250. So, okay, so the VTB, okay, hold on. So my mortgage, so let's do this. Okay, is going to be the 3 million minus my 750 minus my 500. Okay, so that means I'm going to really be able to do the 2.5. I'm going to offer them 3 million. They're going to give me a $500,000 VTB. I'm going to have a down payment of 750 based on a 25% down payment. So that means I have to go get a mortgage for 1.75. Okay. And the way I did that was just 3 million minus 500 minus the 750. Okay. So now I'm going to go and get a mortgage at a rate of, I don't know, let's just say 5%. Okay, and they're going to amortize it, and I'm just going to use 40 years. Well, hold on, it's an older building, so I might not be able to get 40 years on it. Okay, so let's just go 25 years. Okay, so this you're definitely going to have to check. Ideally, I would want to get the MLI on this project, the CMHC MLI, get 50 years max on this if I can, but the building is already older than 50. Okay, so you probably won't get 50 years on this. Okay, but whatever. Okay, so let's just keep going here. So our payments, our monthly mortgage payments is going to be, okay, and it's a PMT, so I'm going to just use the Excel formula here. So this is a super amazing formula in Excel. If you take nothing else away from this video, learn how to write the principal and interest payments, which is the PMT formula in Excel. Okay, so yeah, I love this formula. Okay, so you take your rate divided by 12, then you take your 25-year amortization times that by 12, And then we're at the present value, which is the mortgage amount that we're going to get. Our future value is going to be 0. And then don't worry about the type. It's minuscule in terms of the numbers here. Okay, so that is the formula. You take your interest rate times it by 12, the amortization, divide that. No, hold on. The interest rate, divide that by 12 because you're spreading that over 12 months. The amortization times 12 because you're paying it per month. And then the present value, which is your mortgage, your total loan amount, and then your future value, which is 0, because you're going to pay off the mortgage in 25 years. You're assuming that. Okay, so our monthly mortgage payment is $10,000. Okay, so I'm just going to put monthly payment. So this is interest and principal. So every single month you're going to be paying this down, which is fantastic. Okay, so let's just assume that the rental income, okay, it's Toronto, we've got rent control. It is what it is. Okay, so I'm going to just assume. Okay, so units, we're going to have 8 units, and I'm just going to assume that each unit, okay, per unit, okay, because I don't actually know what the unit mix is. From what I've heard in the past about the building is that it had some 1 bedrooms, and they're massive 1 bedrooms apparently. And I think I was told that there was a couple of bachelors. Don't know. Okay, so I'm gonna just say each unit, let's just say $1,500. Okay, so the total rents, total rental income, oop, total rental income, okay, is going to be 8 units times your 15 times 12 months. Okay, so this is annual income. Annual income. Okay, so now keep in mind that this is before expenses. Okay, so we're just going to throw an expense ratio in here. Okay, expense ratio. Okay, and we're just going, not rate, it's not a rate, it's a ratio. Oops. Okay, so our expense ratio, because it's an older building, I'm going to say 40%. Is that on the high end? I don't know. Okay, but it's a good starting place. Once you get the numbers, and if you're going to close on this, then you're going to want to confirm that, update this spreadsheet. Okay, 40%. So my expenses will now be 144 times 40%. Okay, so that is $57,000 in expenses, which is really good. Okay, so now my NOI is just my 144 minus 57. Okay, so I am going to have an NOI of $86,000. Okay, so now you can see I'm going to be negative cash flowing. Am I going to be negative? Yeah. No, hold on. I am going to be negative cash flowing. Okay, because the monthly mortgage is 10,000. So let me just show you why I'm saying it's negative. I'm going to shift the cells down. We're going to say yearly. I'm going to take the 10,000 times 12. Look at that. So I'm already going to be in the negative. Okay. But now this is where you run your numbers, and you can go to the seller and say, hey, Mr. Seller, in order for me to break even, I need X amount on the VTB. Okay, I need the interest rate to be X amount. I need this to be deferred over. Because here's the thing, this seller is going to know the tenant rules are super crazy, tight. And so maybe the rents are higher. Okay, so let's just say it's at 2,000. Are they now making money? Nope, they're still in the negative, right? But at least once you know what the rents are, you can negotiate what your vendor take back is going to be, because the seller wants to sell, right? They're listing on a down market, so they want to sell for a reason. Okay, so this is how you can utilize a vendor take back. Okay, so as the seller, you want to work with, sorry, as the seller of the property, you want to work with the buyer to figure out how they can cash flow this. Okay, which is why they're saying, hey, half the units can be vacant for you. Okay, which is a good and bad thing depending on how you look at this. So maybe the rents are a little bit higher. I don't know, for a one bedroom apartment in Toronto, you're looking at 2,000, right? Depends on if there's laundry, depends on if they're paying for parking. I don't know. Okay, so now I'm just going to add in a delta here. And this delta is my payments minus my NOI. Okay, you know what? I actually want to go the other way because it will show you a negative number. And if it's a negative number, then that is what you're going to be negative cash flowing per year. So this is annual. Okay. So if it is a negative number, you are negative cash flowing, in this case, $7,000 a year, which sucks. Okay. So you can negotiate this and say, hey, Mr. Seller, maybe this $3 million needs to come down and I still want to get 500K into VTB. However, you can negotiate that. Okay, it might be worthwhile. Okay, so that is the idea around the VTB. Okay, is that you use it to bridge that gap, like bridge the gap, how bridge the gap on getting the property that you want to sell or that you want to buy based on whatever financing you're able to get. Okay, that is what I have for you guys today. My name is Hung Lu. I am with Cash Property Inc., and I hope you have a wonderful long weekend. Thanks, everybody. Have a great time.